we're up. This is the Hour Time with Troy By, and look at that. Actually, this is the first time I've ever worn my new merch, my new swag, my new logo. I've been slowly, I didn't do like a big reveal. I didn't really call a lot of attention to it. But I got rid of the podcast part. It's still a podcast, of course, but I wanted to put my name in there just to further kind of brand myself. And I kept the Our Town font that was as part of the original logo.
Looks great.
Yeah, thanks. So I got these from Five Boys Apparel. I know they're a local Huntsville company, and wanted to support local. And I got the hats. I don't know. I'm a sucker to Instagram when I get the advertisement requests. I love hats and I love T-shirts. So this is the new stuff. And I usually don't wear them in tandem like this, but whatever. I'm overdoing it tonight because Ranae Bartlett is here. And I think it's, I don't know. I wanted to dress up for you.
Well, I appreciate that. And we use Five Boys ourselves.
Do you really?
For our shirts. So
you can't beat that $3.99 deal, right? Or $2.99.
Right. And shopping local is really important.
Well, you don't have to give away the secret, but I would imagine they might even give you a better discount than depending on volume and or the cause.
They have definitely helped us with our coaches and outfitting some of the people who volunteer and help with us.
That's awesome. So Ranae Bartlett, and I say this about a lot of guests, there's a lot of directions that we could take this interview. We could focus on you being a member of the school board at one point in Madison City. We could talk about being the chair of the city council, right?
That's correct.
Which you are doing currently. We could talk about your law career, which is in working for the appeal. Was it the Fifth Circuit, right, of appeals in New Orleans?
Correct.
We could do all that, and we probably will touch on it later in the episode, but I think there's some really cool things going on related to chess, the game of chess, with your club, your league, if you will, with our area hosting tournaments and such, that I'd like to spend the majority of the episode on chess, if you don't mind.
That's great.
Not that we don't, I'm sure you like to talk about yourself and
not really.
All these wonderful things. And I thought of like different ways that I could open up this episode, and let me share this because we are going to talk about chess. And I did mention this at some point in a prior episode, but I just had the most amazing thing happen at work. And I'm going to bring up, let me just get this queued up and ready. I'm going to bring up a picture. Okay, so there's this 9-year-old boy, grandson of one of my coworkers. And so she had to bring him in because I guess she comes into work early, and his camp wasn't going to open up till 9 o'clock or something. So he spent a couple hours at the office before he went to his camp. And he's over there on his phone playing chess. Okay. And I'm like, that's cool. But we're going to talk all about chess tonight. I've done a lot of research. I certainly appreciate the game, but I'm scared of the game too. And I don't know if it's because I know I can't win, or it's going to take me a lot of effort to win, and I'm a very competitive person and I want to win, but I also find it extremely it's kind of beyond my level, and I'm scared of it. So then because of that, then I just don't go there in a way. It's like I'm not able to think. I know even in checkers, I can't think ahead the way you're supposed to think ahead and anticipate 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 moves that my opponent might do. So therefore, I'm scared to play. Well, so I'm talking to this kid, and he's playing chess, and very quickly and rapidly and everything. And then I said, "Hey, man, I would like to play you in checkers sometime." And he looked at me like I was an alien. He I kid you not, he says, "What's checkers?"
Wow.
And I was like, this is a different generation. So here's this picture I want to show.
Okay.
Now this says it all. Here's these kids. This is your chess league. This is from your Facebook page, by the way.
Yes.
Any picture I show you tonight shouldn't be a surprise because this comes from your Facebook page. And here are some youngsters that might be 8 or 9 years old.
That's right.
And this kid was 9 years old. And I thought to myself, how in the world does he not know about checkers? And then I thought about it more. I said, well, they've grown up in the internet age. They've grown up in the YouTube age. Chess is more likely on your phone than checkers is. And these are just smart kids. They're different, and that's kind of hard, right? I'm 47, and I was a child of the 80s, and I realized these in some respects, these kids are smarter than maybe I ever will be, or they're just on this great path, right? Isn't that amazing?
It is.
Have you heard of? Is this a common thing where kids that you work with at these young levels are like don't even know what checkers is?
I don't know that I've asked a kid if they want to play checkers. They know me as the chess lady when I walk into schools. I'm usually wearing a chess shirt. And the kids are getting younger and younger in learning chess. There are days when I was on the school board. Some days are harder than others. And whenever adults would wear me out, I would take my giant chess set, go into a pre-K classroom, and teach kids how to play. When I get to play with kids, that gives me joy. And so that helps revive me, re-energize me. And the kids are picking it up online. They're playing over the board, and they really are enjoying it. They're having fun, but they're learning critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, and that's why parents like it, teachers like it, and schools like it.
When you say over the board, you mean an actual board, like a tangible...
Like the picture you showed.
Okay.
A lot of our tournaments are over the board. Now during COVID, we had to go online.
Yeah.
And that was really tough. In 2020, we couldn't play inside. The guidelines wouldn't let us, so we decided to play a chess match on a football field. That was one way we could do it.
There it is right there, right?
Oh, my goodness, yes. So it was the first time we'd ever done it was 2020, and that was to solve a problem. We wanted kids to be able to play. It was joyous. It was a beautiful day, and it was the first time we had ever been able to be on the turf field. Parents loved it. Kids were running around all day. These were shorter games. We called it a rapid tournament, so the games were 20 minutes per side, and so we only played 4 rounds. They got to wear their Halloween costumes. That was a lot of fun. And we had these side contests in between each round. So we had a Halloween dance-off. That was a favorite.
Really?
We gave out special prizes for the dance-off winners. We also had costume contests with themes. And, of course, since it was COVID, we had the best mask costume award and the scariest gloves and things like that. And it was so popular that we brought it back each year. And so we're going to have the Halloween tournament again. It grows each year. And it'll be on the football field, weather permitting.
So let's give a little context to the league that you're involved with, and kind of when you became involved. I believe this goes back to 2013, correct?
Correct.
And this is the Madison City Chess League.
That's right. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary. And when I started volunteering, I was just working at my son's school.
At Rainbow, right?
At Rainbow Elementary. And I was just a parent volunteer. A PTA board member asked me, "Do you know how to play chess?" And I said, "Yes." And boy, I was in trouble then. And so I started helping the gifted teacher and just starting chess club, going to tournaments. And when I went to tournaments, my first Super Nationals tournament in Nashville was 2013. And that's where I saw the scale of chess with thousands of kids at the Gaylord Opryland competing. And I realized we needed to up our game. And so there were a couple of key things that helped us in the next year win our first state championship at Rainbow. One was going online to supplement our practices. We were practicing every week, working with a coach, but we subscribed to chesskid.com, and you can get a free subscription or a paid subscription to get more content. And our kids were working, solving puzzles. They loved it, and they loved playing over the board as well. But that supplemental information helped us bring a level of instruction that we couldn't, and it allowed kids to work at their own pace.
Let me ask you this. When you went up to Nashville and you saw a huge competition, right? Was there any part of before you went on that trip where you had a little bit of reservation on whether or not our kids, I mean, right, Madison, our locally could compete, or would there be enough interest? Surely there's not going to be enough kids. And then you go to something like that, and then you realize, oh my gosh, like, okay, the cat's out of the bag, or this is actually bigger nationally than I had thought?
So at the first time I went, we brought 7 kids
Okay.
from Rainbow Elementary, very small contingent. And the kids didn't win all their games, but we went to learn and to challenge ourselves, and they became more hungry.
Okay.
They wanted to get better. They wanted to learn from the traps that were set for them, and they all record their games. This is something that we teach all of our kids, even in elementary school. So as they make a move, they notate that move, and then we recreate the games. A lot of times that's what we use in the subsequent practice to go over moves and mistakes, and we learn from them, and we create a safe place where it's okay to make mistakes because this is how we learn to get better.
So Chess Kid allows you to record.
Well, Chess Kid does it automatically if you're playing online, but the kids manually do it in an over-the-board tournament.
Oh, okay. So they use a video camera or their phone?
So they use their hands and a piece of paper. There's a recording
that
sheet.
kind of recording sheet.
So they're actually just manually writing down the moves, and they'll do this at like the tournament, that picture that you just showed. They're doing this all the time. Now online, what Chess Kid lets us do is that we can have puzzle contests. They can learn lessons. They can play live, and they can play kids all over the world at any time. And so that's exciting. They can play robots. They can learn a lot of information.
I just realized when I heard record, I thought of like video recording versus just kind of notating.
Oh, yeah.
Recording, right? A log, if you will.
That's right.
Right, of the moves.
That's right.
So how do you begin to teach how young do you go, by the way? Are we talking 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds?
Most of our kids in elementary school, it's a K-5 environment, and certain schools, it depends on how they're set up. Some schools have a special kindergarten chess club, and they might invite some pre-K kids. I have taught kids as young as 4.
Okay. So if you have, let's just say they're 7, a 7-year-old. Similar to what I was saying before of just even having apprehension as a 47-year-old to enter into chess. How do you approach teaching a 7-year-old?
So when you're working with really young kids, you have to break things up. You can't just lecture. They have to apply what you're trying to show them. So it might be a simple checkmating pattern at the beginning after you get through learning how the pieces move and things like that. So you chunk the lessons. You show something and then you do something. Kids like to use their hands. They like to get in there and try to do what you're asking them to do. And you have to have fun. You have to keep it fun. It's not like being a drill sergeant and you're trying to make them do certain things. They'll do it on their own, and you incentivize it. You give them prizes when they reach certain achievements. And so you can do that online or you can do that in person.
So I know that there's this concept of openings, there's the middle game, there's end game, there's tactics. Do you kind of start with first just the pieces and some of the basic movements, and do you get to something like an opening where you start teaching them, hey, I think a good coach would tell you, stick to one method. Don't try to vary the methods of your strategy, if you will. Does that make sense?
It does. Different coaches approach this in different ways. I would say that the most common way to teach kids, though, how to play chess is not focusing as much on the opening as the end game. So
Okay.
once you learn how the pieces move, usually the next thing that we teach kids are these checkmating patterns. It might be mate in 1. What's the next move that will checkmate the king? And so they're learning, they solve puzzles, or they'll do this over the board in practice, and we'll teach them different checkmating patterns and ways to checkmate the king.
So that kind of, you start with the end and then just work backwards?
Sort of.
Sort of?
Sort of. So you want them to know how the game concludes. You want to know what the end game is. You want to know what the objective is. And it's simpler to understand it when you have less pieces on the board.
Okay.
And so a lot of times, beginner players, their objective is to just capture pieces. They love capturing pieces, and they like lining them up and seeing what they're capturing. But we're trying to keep them focused on checkmating. It doesn't do you any good to capture a bunch of pieces if your opponent is about to checkmate you in 2 moves.
Yeah.
So you want to keep the focus on the end game.
Okay. And, I would imagine kids learn pretty quickly.
They do.
And I'm assuming they surprise you every single time.
Yes.
right? With how fast they learn. So how quick is it that, so it sounds like you're starting with just a few pieces, but how soon do you get to the full board and you're talking about white and black and who start offense and defense and who starts, and how fast does that occur?
So that can happen in a month if you're really on an accelerated program. Some schools meet more than once, some schools meet once a week. You also have other opportunities to just play in the community like we do at Madison Library. We have Monday night chess. And so the more that you practice, that also accelerates learning. And then some kids do this on their own, or they might get on chesskid.com and practice themselves and play other kids and play robots. But they can play in elementary schools, start playing with a full board within a month.
Really? Do they immediately want to start competing? Or is it, so I guess there's this aspect too of the phase of just kind of the hobby. Hey, I just want to play you, just have a competition versus tournament, which is very different, whether it's time-based or whatever the rule set is. Do a lot of them have that hunger to compete?
Oh, yes, early on. And so some kids really love winning those medals and trophies. Some kids like being at tournaments to hang out with their friends. A lot of motivations there, but some really do like the competitive aspect. And some of our schools will have recreation chess club for the kids who just want to play for fun. And then we have chess teams that teach kids how to compete.
All right, so let's pause now, and I want to ask you a question. And I don't want to at this point go back through your full history. The question is, when did you develop a passion for chess?
It really happened in elementary school when my son was in elementary school, when I started the Madison City Chess League.
As an adult?
As an adult. I just played casually. I never went to a competition. But then I accompanied my son, and what I began to see is the power of chess as an educational tool. My mind was attuned to that as a school board member. Mm-hmm. And when I saw Rainbow Elementary win their first state championship, and I saw how many puzzles they were doing and how smart these kids were and how driven they were, kind of on their own. They were self-motivated, but they had a strong team to help encourage them. I wanted every kid in Madison to have the benefit of chess education, even if they never competed a day in their lives. And so I convinced our superintendent and our Board of Education to pay for a gold subscription for every elementary student in Madison. And they did, and they do it to this day. And they've added middle school chess elective classes. We have chess teams in every single school, elementary, middle, and high school. And I could see, because of the data I could read on the Chess Kid report cards, any teacher can pull data on how many puzzles kids are doing. I saw kids that weren't even on chess team, but they were solving hundreds of puzzles a week. And I would contact their parents. I'd ask the principal, would you have their parent contact me and talk to them about how brilliant their child is? They are doing things that, that are really unusual. And so when I would talk to parents, a lot of times they were surprised. They didn't know either that we had this program at the school. They didn't know their child was really interested in it. Mm-hmm. And so it was an awakening for them too. And I would bring them in to chess practice or summer camp and sort of expand their instruction.
So to play back what I've heard, it didn't start at any early, you might have liked chess, you played some chess, but you didn't compete. It wasn't something that was you were passionate about hobby-wise or otherwise at some point in your life.
That's right.
Okay. I wasn't sure if I was going to be interviewing a grandmaster.
Oh, no.
Or one that, okay, my playing days are behind me and, but I used to compete, or sometimes people just stop doing something because they are so addicted to it, and I've seen that a lot in just things like golf. Or maybe racquetball or something, right? Where it's just something that's takes you away from the family, and that person says, "All right, I can't control this addiction. I've got to stop playing." So they're like this recovering person, trying to figure out a way forward. Okay, so I know you were born in Korea, but your father was in the service at Camp Page, right?
That's right.
Over there. Okay.
He retired from the Air Force.
and so yeah, okay, so that clears that up. So really, now I read, I think credit to Erica Despain. I know she interviewed you on Groundhog Day of 2022 for All Things Madison. I love her. She was in episode 70, and we had a great talk. And I read the article that she wrote on you, and she mentioned, I guess around 2013, when you kind of take over, someone from the school comes to you and says, "Hey, would you happen to?" What was? It sounded like you were being nice, and the way it was quoted, like, well, there was some things that needed to be fixed or addressed with the state of the chess club at the time. Is that just kind of fair to say there was really nothing going on? They were trying to make something happen. Just not enough kids were involved. Like,
So
what did you start with?
At that time, I think Rainbow Elementary had an active chess club. The gifted teacher was wonderful. They were meeting in the mornings.
Okay.
And they were doing what other schools were doing and playing in tournaments run by Alabama tournament directors. We would travel to Huntsville. They were the ones who were conducting all the tournaments. So they were doing a great job, but I think the key was when we moved it from a morning club, because elementary school starts at 7:40, so we would have to get there at 7 in the morning, maybe by 7:15, depending on some clubs start in the morning. And I convinced the teacher to switch to after school the next year. So the second year, we open it up, and we don't even have equipment. So I'm asking parents to donate equipment. These are not regulation boards. These are things you could purchase at Walmart and bring it in. And we had over 100 kids sign up the next year when we moved to after school. And that's when I realized, wow, these kids are really hungry for this. And I needed to get help. I needed to get other volunteers to help. And the teachers and the administration at Rainbow were so supportive.
I was trying to think today. I run the Bradford Creek Trail. I'll talk about this from time to time, right? And I usually always go on a run the day. Well, I run as much as I can. It's hot out there, but I'm not. That doesn't bother me too much. Although it's always like a tough run, and I sweat like crazy. But I use it just as time to think and process and kind of finalize my thoughts for the episode, right? And I was trying to think. Okay, never would I have thought that I would say arguably the two fastest growing sports right now. One is a sport that didn't even exist, pickleball.
Yeah.
Has to be the fastest growing. And I would say chess is probably right there.
Absolutely.
And more, I don't know if it's just more and more kids finding ways away from team sports. And, we got some issues with football and CTE and just things that can happen. You can get hurt, where there's just this, we're hungry for things that you can kind of play. Now you look at pickleball and chess, and the things they have in common is you can play till the day you die. You can probably be 90 and still play pickleball. It's amazing because it's just a way you can control the game.
Yeah.
And now you're just seeing so much more involvement in at least those two disciplines of any age can participate, have a good time, be competitive.
Yeah.
Now, so now you weren't a chess player and competitor. Have you had to learn certain strategies and kind of bone up on what you're going to teach these kids as a coach, or I guess you're going to hire coaches, right? I mean,
We do.
Or do the kids get to pick their strategies once they do some research, they do some practice and kind of develop their own skill set?
So at the beginning, it's very much teacher-led, coach-led in terms of what we're teaching in elementary school. And sure, I do plan a lesson. Occasionally I'll visit the other chess clubs in Madison to offer support, plan a lesson. But in elementary school, generally speaking, we're guiding their instruction. Now, in chess, as in a lot of things, you have to be self-motivated and you have to learn how to teach yourself. Mm-hmm. There's only so much you can get from the coach in the classroom, the teacher in the classroom, and it's because you're inquisitive, because you want to learn more, and kids start absorbing it and picking what they want to do. They'll watch videos. They'll watch Twitch streams now. Mm-hmm. Chess is so popular and accessible, and you can do it for free. You don't have to pay for subscriptions, but you can get access to more content by paying for subscriptions. So it has really taken off.
Do you get some of those kids? I can imagine where their parents fill them with like, make sure they teach you the London.
Oh,
and I don't know if you're enough of a player to know that. And I always find like it interesting where there's the London, there's the Swiss as far as the way they seed tournaments and stuff, and I'm always curious and fascinated about the origin of these things. Like, well, why is it called the London? Is it like because the crown jewels are in London and there's some sort of opening being just like it's the first several moves, right, of the game where you're protecting things. But I find that fascinating. But I can also just imagine some kid coming in. When are you going to teach us the London?
Kids do have a fascination for certain openings, and they will ask to learn certain ones, especially if someone sets a trap for them and they want to learn, how do I defend the trap? And so that's really where openings come into play when we teach. Oftentimes it's to help the kids learn how to avoid the traps, not to necessarily set the traps, because some of the traps are really bad chess. The scholar's mate, that's the simplest checkmating trap, and you're moving your queen out too early. Well, generally speaking, you're telling your players you don't move your queen out too early, you develop your other pieces. But we're going to show you this trap so that you can learn how to defend against it. Don't give somebody an easy win, but don't play like that either, because, 3-move chess, what are you going to learn from that? Nothing.
Yeah.
We want kids to play through a middle game transition, get to the end game so we can analyze a full game and learn from it.
So, the way I opened this, and I was talking about checkers, do you think it is just a matter of these kids, games need to be a challenge for them versus some of the games, of yesteryear, maybe not that complicated, right? Do you find them thirsting for things like chess that are just complicated? They want to solve problems. That somewhat surprise you as compared to prior generations?
I don't know if it's generational or regional. I will say that here in North Alabama, we have a lot of smart people in general. We have a lot of smart kids. They're constantly wanting high achievement, and they do things. They gravitate to things to challenge themselves to be better. And so it's not surprising to me here in North Alabama that this is a popular thing to do.
Yeah.
It's a safe thing to do. It's really not that expensive, and most parents are very supportive.
Sometimes I do forget. When I was running today, there was a guy, I could tell he was on a work call. He had to stop walking or running, whatever he was doing. And his shirt said Astro Dad. I was like, well, that's true. I'm like, most of these kids, I shouldn't say most, many of them have parents that are working on the arsenal, right? In the space programs or such, we have the most PhDs when it comes to astrophysics and things like that, right? Or just more PhDs per capita in this city than any other city in the country. So that makes sense. And sometimes I still forget that. But so, yeah, you obviously touched on like, duh.
Well, yeah. But it's growing. And I'm not sure I was expecting how popular it has gotten recently.
Yeah.
There was a real spike, partly because of the Queen's Gambit, partly because COVID, online chess, everyone went online, and so there was a real surge in interest. But today, I'm setting up for a record-setting tournament in Madison. Since I started this organization 10 years ago, I've never held a tournament for almost 200 kids, and that's what's about to happen Saturday. And so that surprised me, because this time last year, we were out of COVID, and this tournament hit its all-time high of 130, and now 50% higher. I did not foresee that. I had to go out and buy more chess pieces.
And remind us which tournament this is?
This is the Summer Nights tournament, the first tournament of the school year, always the last Saturday in August at Rainbow Elementary.
Okay. And then following that, over Labor Day weekend, is the big tournament at Toyota Field.
Oh, yeah.
Correct?
This is the first time in the history of Alabama that Madison has gotten to host the state chess championship for mostly adults, but we have a lot of kids who are rated pretty high, and they will play in some of the sections, some of the championship sections or under sections. So we expect to see some students there as well.
Do you have any idea the number of players that will compete?
It should be around 100. That's the normal registration level of an adult state chess championship.
So you got 50 tables, 2 competitors at each table. Mm-hmm. And so let's dive into tournaments, because you're a tournament director, and
That's right.
I know it's at the younger level, but the same principles apply. Or do they apply? So it's time based. Are you pretty much dealing with time based tournaments? And can you just walk through that a little bit for those of us who are novices to time based tournament play?
Sure. So the rules are the same. We follow the U.S. Chess Federation's rules, and our tournament directors are certified through the U.S. Chess Federation. And whether you're an adult or you're a kid, when you register for a tournament, the flyer will explain to you what the time control is. So, for example, this tournament, Summer Nights tournament, that's record setting with 200 kids, they're going to play with a game 30 time control with a 5-second delay. And that means that both players will get 30 minutes with a 5-second delay to complete their moves. And you can lose a game on time. If you're sitting there thinking for 25 minutes, you're probably going to lose, because you're going to need to move, and you're going to have to press the clock after your move, and your opponent's then going to do the same thing. And while they're doing that, they're notating their moves, so they're recording everything that they're doing. And so in a student tournament, scholastic tournaments, they're often called, these K-12 tournaments, the time control is usually 30 minutes per side. So each round would take about an hour. It takes all day. We play 5 rounds. So the awards are at the end of the day. It might be 4 or 5 o'clock. A lot of times parents are surprised to find out that they're not eliminated after the first loss. And it's a Swiss pairing system that we use. So you play every round, and you play somebody who scored the same points that you scored in the previous rounds accumulated. So after round 1, if you lose your game, you get 0 points, and you're going to be paired against somebody else who lost their first round game in round 2. And you continue like that throughout the day.
So then if you won, then obviously you're moving on. So it's not like you're beating up on an inferior opponent every round.
That's right.
They're trying to, because it's a little bit blind, right? You don't know what you're essentially dealing with everybody who's entered. And right away, though, you can kind of level the playing field round by round.
So that's true for the non-rated section.
Okay.
For the rated section, kids are constantly working on achieving a higher rating.
Okay.
They want to win more games than lose, so that the rating will go up. And in tournaments, it kind of zigzags. It kind of goes up and down, but most players who continue to play, their rating moves in a northeast trajectory. So they're going to get better and higher ratings the more they play and the more they win. And we turn in a tournament report with the U.S. Chess Federation, and they norm the tournament and help develop what the rating should be and score it at the end of the tournament.
Okay. Let's start. If I'm sitting across from you and there's 30 seconds on my clock, 30 minutes on my clock, 30 minutes on your clock. Uh-huh. I'm white. White always goes first, right?
Yes.
I make a move, and then I hit the clock to stop. And then that means there's a 5-second delay before you need to. Where does that 5-second delay come in?
That's right. So there'll be a delay clock that's clicking, turning down 5 seconds, and then my seconds on my clock start.
So you have a few seconds essentially then just to kind of gather your thoughts, to quickly analyze what I just did before the time starts to go against you.
So, yes, and usually my 5 seconds, I'm first recording your move. So I'm going to write down what you did.
Okay.
And then it depends on how much time you're taking. Like if you're taking a lot of time, I would coach my kids think on their clock. So I would sit and think and I'd try to anticipate what you might be doing, thinking about what I might do in response on your time.
Right.
So I'm not idle. And
again, there's nothing that says I have to move by a certain amount of time, but the more time goes by, then obviously it's going to hurt me, because if I'm going to really against a good player, then I'm going to run out of time.
That's right.
Right.
And you can lose on time. And so as a tournament director, some of the calls that we have to make, because players really control their game and they have to make claims. There aren't enough tournament directors to watch every board that's playing. So you have to rely on somebody to raise their hand, stop their clock, to bring a tournament director over, because there might be a rule violation and somebody has to make that claim. The most common claims for scholastic tournaments are touch move. If you touch a piece and you can make a legal move, you have to move that piece. And so kids they can get a little jittery. They like to play with the pieces, and so I tell them to sit on their hands until they know for sure which piece they want to move, because if their opponent claims touch move, then they're going to have to move a piece they might not have really wanted to.
Gotcha. Okay, and then of course, as a director, you're looking. I would imagine at the younger ages, we're not worried about cheating as much, or do you see some of that?
So you always have to enforce fair play rules, whether you're doing it online or whether you're doing it over the board. So there's certain things that we do in terms of the way we conduct our tournaments to eliminate cheating. One thing that we do is we do not let cell phones accompany players on their person. So they have to pack it away in their bag if they're bringing a bag into the tournament room. If they go to the restroom, they have to leave the bag there. They can't take a cell phone with them because it's a computer engine. They could cheat. It has happened in student tournaments, I know, at a national level. So they have to watch for that. At some adult tournaments, I've also seen them have a table for a cell phone, so they'll have somebody monitoring that before they go to the restroom, so they have to set their cell phones down. So that is one of the things that you do watch for, but otherwise there's really not. I've not had to run into that kind of problem at a student tournament.
Okay. So again, your time is mostly spent on the claims, where they kind of call you over for, which I would imagine is going to happen more at these younger ages, right? Where they're not sure, maybe they're a little nervous.
Yes.
And there may be an overreaction at times, and they call you over too many times.
Or a lot of times is this checkmate? They don't know if they've won or not. And so you're trying.
Did I win?
Yeah. So you're trying to talk them through the process, not necessarily answer the question, but if they're trying to ask, is this checkmate? You're going to say, well, can you take the piece that has you in check? Can you put a piece in between?
Yeah.
Can you move the piece that's in check? And so you kind of get them through the questions so that they can kind of figure it out for themselves.
Let's talk now about, okay, so it's a full day. You're going to play mini rounds. We talked about the Swiss system. That's what slates you against, your different competitors and such, and then reassigns you after each round. Win, draw, lose, right? I'm assuming you do draws in these types of tournaments. And, it's interesting. I was also really thinking hard about what are those sports, because somebody could be like, oh, that's ridiculous. You shouldn't have a draw like in chess. Like, okay, that might be one thing if it's just you and I playing on a Saturday and we just agree, one of us is going to win or lose, type thing. But a draw, the strategy, I think why people really love sports is in games and such is when there's a complexity. Ooh, I'm going to be playing all day, right? If your kid ever did wrestling or gymnastics or swimming, there's this element of how do you stay fresh for every time you go and swim. If you're going to swim 5 events over 2 days, there's a whole appreciation for that athlete on how they keep preparing themselves to, get up for their heat. And then how they cool down, how they nourish. In wrestling, they have to keep making weight. So I always appreciate that grind, if you will, and the thought that has to go into, hey, how am I going to really compete at the highest level for these 2 days? Chess is really no different, where you're like, okay, the draws can really factor into a full day thing because you're trying to protect your rating. Can you talk about draws? And is that something that you're coaching these young kids to learn how to use to their benefit or know when it is appropriate to request a draw?
Absolutely. It is a big topic that we do cover. And let me put it in perspective. When you mention the state championship, the time control on that event for 6 rounds over 3 days is 2 hours per side. So 120 minutes. And so each round could last 4 hours. Now, the state championship starts on a Friday night, but there are 3 rounds on Saturday. And depending on your stamina, and we have various ages playing at the state championship, there might be a strategic decision that, hey, an easy draw might help me get some rest Saturday night, or they might ask for a bye. You can get half a point, just like you get half a point for a draw. and skip around. So strategy plays into that. Some of our kids at national tournaments will also play games that are 90 minutes per side, 3-hour rounds. My son, many times, was the last person at 11 p.m. We would stand there and wait.
Yeah.
And he would, have whatever result he had, but he was fighting really hard. And sometimes it is a test of stamina. Now, when it comes to kids, and you teach them different ways that you could draw a game. Like a draw can happen because there's insufficient mating material. The kids love just capturing, and if you got 2 kings left on the board, you can't do anything. So it is a book draw.
Right.
And so there's certain ways that you can also agree to a draw. Now, one year, I remember a team that I was coaching, and it seemed like after a certain tournament, we had an awful lot of draws. And so I decided to work with the coach, and I took all of the scorebooks home, and I looked through all of the drawn games. And we teach them how to evaluate their position. So it may be that they would look at the time that they had left. If I don't have a lot of time, even though I'm in a pretty good position, a draw might be a good idea if my opponent offers me one. And we teach our kids, if your opponent's offering you a draw, you need to really think about that before you accept. Why is your opponent offering you a draw? If they're running out of time, you're probably going to beat them. So we teach them how to evaluate their positions. But that one tournament where I saw a whole lot of draws, I decided that after every tournament, any game that was drawn, you're on the giant screen. We're going to go over your game. We're going to analyze your position at the moment that you accepted a draw or you offered a draw. And we're going to analyze it as a class together. And so we would. Everyone who had a drawn game. That next tournament, no one had drawn games. We went to conclusion because we taught them that a lot of the draws that they were accepting or offering, they were in a superior position. They might have had mate and 3, and we were going through those games and learning from them.
So to some degree, they were being played by a more experienced player.
Sometimes.
Right. And if they've learned that, like, oh no, I decline, because they realize they're in a really good position.
Yeah.
And I guess and then if they took the draw, it might just because, I am kind of tired.
Sure.
Let me just get some more rest, get some food in me, right?
Sure.
No harm, no foul. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, you know what? I'm going to insert a story right now that has nothing to do with chess.
Okay.
But I have to tell you this story because you said I didn't realize you can ask for a buy.
Okay.
So what does that, actually real quick, before I get into the story, what does that mean? You're not going to play that person because you think you're going to lose?
No, you don't get to know who you're paired up against. So it's in advance. Oftentimes, I'll have a kid who has a soccer game at 8 a.m. And since they're going to miss the first round, they'll request a first round bye, or they have to leave early and they know they've got to go to another game or some other tournament, and so they may have to leave early, or they have something to do at lunch, so they'll just skip around.
So that other person will just get the victory?
No, they don't get paired.
Oh.
They get to play somebody else who's there.
Okay. So then it hurts their rating ultimately?
It has no effect on the rating.
Okay. They don't get to win, obviously, then.
That's right.
They just don't get the place.
It's a courtesy for your schedule.
All right. So our last name was Bai. Uh-huh. And my son, this was his senior year of high school, and he was a wrestler. And in wrestling, you don't really have that many home matches. So this was one of the few home matches. And it was actually most high schools will have one tournament where it's like it's like a fundraising type thing, and they'll host a big tournament. Which is, you can't do that all the time. It takes a lot of effort, right, to put together a tournament and host it and ask all these schools to come, and you got to have the formats and all this stuff. So anyway, we're hosting this tournament, and he it's one of the first. I think it's his first match of the morning, Saturday 9:00. Well, you could kind of tell there were 5 mats total. But there's, 15 schools there. So not every team is wrestling every match. Okay. So you kind of look around, you get a feel for kind of by color. If you've lived somewhere long enough, there's Huntsville, there's Grissom, right? There's Clemens, there's Bob Jones. So I'm kind of looking around the gym, and they were wrestling this school that was like purple. That was like, their predominant color. And well, sure enough, and normally what they did, because her last name was By, if you actually did have a By, they would capitalize it, BYE, and that's it. But if your last name is By, then it was, capital B, YE, comma, and then like his first initial B, Brandon's his name, and or something that alluded to this is actually an individual. You're not getting a By. So, so it's 9:00 in the morning. Most of the kids, they've weighed in. They've kind of done some warm up, and he's out on the mat. He's ready. He's ready to go. And normally wrestlers, they're ready. They go up to the scoring table. They do a check in and then onto the mat, and it moves very quickly. So something's wrong. This kid hasn't come out to check in at the table, and they're looking around Like I don't know if you've ever been to a wrestling match, but it's like it seems there's a lot going on. And it's hard for a coach because a coach always has to be present while any coach has to be present while their kid is wrestling. But it's hard in a tournament sometimes because you might have 3 or 4 kids wrestling. It's not supposed to be this way, but some matches will take longer. There could be an injury timeout, whatever it might be. And then the coach, they have to wait for the coach to come over or whatever, right? So it just seems chaotic. Well, this kid hasn't shown up, and they're starting to ask, like, I don't remember the kid's name, but I knew what school, and they're like, James, report to the mat. And everyone's like, yelling, James. And you start looking around, and this kid is sitting in the stands, and he's eating like Doritos. And he's got this look on his face like, I don't have to wrestle to the second round. I've got a bye in the first round. And he is just chilling. And they're like, get down here. They're like all yelling at him. He's like, what? I have a bye. He's like, no. You're wrestling Brandon By from Millbrook. And he's like, and then his face just goes white. Oh. And I was filming the match, and I told my son, you better beat this punk in like 20 seconds because he is cold. Like he has done nothing to prepare to wrestle today because he just thought he was good till probably noon. And sure enough, that kid, poor guy, puts a singlet on, and I think he pinned him in like 30 seconds. It was quick. But the look on his face, they're like, what? I'm wrestling? Yeah, you're wrestling Brandon By. It was classic. It was classic. And that's only happened one time. But I always felt like we would have this advantage with the last, the surname By when it came to sports where you were bracketed. Sorry, I had to share that.
That's great.
All right, so then the other big tournament that's coming up is next year we're hosting the state, a different one in February. Is that right?
Yes.
Talk to me about that one. I want to get these big tournaments out of the way.
So this big tournament is one of my favorite tournaments. It is the all-girls state chess championship. And we host it because we have the highest concentration of girls playing chess in the state. And so we've been doing this for about 5 years. In the last couple of years, I wanted to move the tournaments out of schools and take them to industry, take the girls to see where they can apply some of the skills that they're learning in chess games. And so we went to Hexagon a couple of years ago, and the girls loved that environment. And they thought, wow, people work in a building like this. They loved that building. And then we went to Hudson Alpha last year and got to tour and play in that wonderful facility. This year, we're going to the cyber school.
Cool.
And so that's another level of exposure. There are girls from all over the state who will come to compete, and they'll get to see what our cyber school looks like. Some of them may indeed want to apply. And so I called up Matt Massey, and I said, Matt, you need more girls in your school. And I think I got an idea of how you can get more girls. Let's host the all-girls state chess championship. And he was all about it.
And what's the age?
So it's K-12.
K-12, okay. And only 100 competitors at a time?
No, that's not limited, but there aren't as many girls playing chess as boys. Okay. They're outnumbered in general. So when we first started this tournament, I think our numbers were probably in the 30s or 40s. Last year, we had 66 girls playing. So I'm hoping this year we'll get up to 75. Now, we had 66 girls because I remembered monitoring and watching what other states were doing around us. And Florida had just held their women and girls tournament, and they had 64. So we had 2 more than Florida, and we didn't even have women in our tournament.
Wow.
And I felt really good about that. And we had more than Tennessee did. So we've outnumbered Tennessee's all-girls tournament for a number of years.
So I didn't do any research on this topic. I did think about it, though. Why is chess not popular amongst girls growing up, young women, women?
So it really depends on your program and what you're doing. For example, we do things intentionally in Madison to get more girls excited about chess. They have a lot of options. They have a lot of things to do, and the drop-off tends to be in middle school. You can keep it pretty even in elementary, but by middle and high school, they tend to drop off. Now, I've had teams in middle school that were half girls. So we're a little different up here. And one of the things I did was I asked girls, why do you like chess, who did come to tournaments? And you ask boys, and you get 2 different answers. So for boys, they would tell me, I want to win the trophy. And when I asked girls, they said, I want to hang out with my friends. So what I realized was I need to do more things to let the chess girls hang out with each other, to bond. It's not just about playing chess.
Yeah.
So we would do movie nights or ice cream night. They'd bring their boards. So sometimes we might be, at an ice cream place and we'll bring our boards out. Or we'll be at somebody's house and a game will start. But it's just one of the things that's on the side. It's more about building relationships.
So is this like a just kind of similar to like STEM? We don't have enough girls in STEM type thing, right? They're trying to promote what is it about chess that as a child, boys gravitated to it more than girls?
Well, I think some of it is encouragement. So there's so many things that girls can do, and the things that compete with our chess tournaments are girls can do athletics, dance, cheer. There's so many things that they can do. Now, the other thing that can be self-defeating is if you walk into a chess club and you're the only girl there, you might not want to come back. So if you're setting up an environment where the boys really outnumber the girls, then you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. And so one of the things that Rainbow Elementary has done, they started a kindergarten club just for kindergartners. And they have intentionally limited the seats because you can't have 24 kindergartners. You have to have a smaller number. But they give half the seats to girls. So they kind of start off level in terms of getting that exposure at a young age, and we host a kindergarten chess tournament just for kindergartners all over.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, growing up, I didn't have any friends. We didn't play chess. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why not. So and it would be interesting, like why, if there was a pocket of kids somewhere that played, why did mostly boys gravitated to it more than girls? I don't. Maybe none of us will ever have that answer. But do they? You don't see any difference, do you? In the ability or competitiveness? I'm assuming those girls are going to get pretty competitive.
Oh, yes. We've had girls win their sections, even though they're outnumbered. So the girls are fierce competitors.
Yeah.
No, there's no gender distinction in chess. I've seen no evidence of that. There are a lot of reasons why you have so many more men playing chess than women, but not because of their gender.
Sure. I have one daughter, 3 boys, and my daughter she is competitive. So it doesn't matter what it is. If we go bowling and she's not doing well, it's you can just see, like, I do not want to lose to my brothers. So, you said on your bucket list you wanted to be a tournament director more on the national level, right? For like I guess first and second grade. Yeah. Can you talk more about that and what's kind of led you to, why that goal?
So I have not been a tournament director at the national level, only at the local level. But I've attended a lot of tournaments, and so I've walked in kids at the K1 section, that's the youngest section at nationals, and help them find their boards because older kids can find it themselves. So I tend to shepherd the younger kids, especially in a big ballroom. And then I'd always take pictures of all the kids at their board because then I would share that afterwards. And I'm watching these kids, and I see it on a local level too. But kids' eyes that young, you can really see them thinking. You can see when that light bulb comes on, and they're, I see it. I know what I need to do. They're not trying to hide it. They don't have a poker face yet at K1. That age is so fun. And also just to watch them get there, struggle. They're not as quick, but they're good. And just to see people that young absorb this game, I have such an appreciation for it. So, I'd love to TD at a K1 section of a Nationals.
Did they call you Coach Bartlett?
No. This is sort of funny. I don't know how it started, but it might be a Southern thing. So most people call me Miss Ranae in the chess setting. But then it got kind of funny when the parents called me Miss Ranae because their kids called me Miss Ranae.
Oh, really?
So at tournaments, I have people coming up to me all the time, Miss Ranae, Miss Ranae, Miss Ranae. And I'm like, it's just Ranae, But now even the parents call me that.
You know what? I wonder, I think it might be because you are the chair of the city council and in their minds, you're a very important person. It's an easier out to go with what the kids call you because they're not sure what to call you.
Okay, so
you know what I mean?
Here's the thing. Now, this is funny. When I was on the school board, what I have learned is that most people have no idea I'm on the city council, and they didn't know I was on the school board.
Oh, really?
When I was running chess tournaments. So I had a family that had moved here from Texas, and at Rainbow Elementary, and I was running the Summer Nights tournament a few years ago, and I always ask people, why did you move to Madison? Or why did you move to the Rainbow Zone? And this family said, oh, the chess program. I'd heard about the chess program. I've heard this so many times.
That's awesome.
And so they move into the Rainbow Zone, and they want to be in the chess program. And then this parent said, you're not going to believe this, but there's a school board member that tweets about these tournaments every day. And I went, you're kidding. Really? Kidding. I mean, I had no idea. So a lot of times people are shocked to find out I'm in public service. They just think I'm the chess lady.
Well, there goes my theory.
Yeah.
Or they just don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they just don't know. It's like, I'm just going to call you Miss Ranae.